we have some huge Grand Theft Auto 6 news because the co-founder of Rockstar Games, after 17 years, have decided to do an interview publicly for the first time, this time with Lex Friedman. Now, the interview is 3 hours long, so this is a big one, and I wanted to compile the best moment for you so that you don't have to go through the 3 hours, but if you do want to, there's a link in the description. This guy has worked on every single Rockstar game, every single GTA, every single Red Dead Redemption, and also all the other games like Bully, Manhunt, LA Noire, etc, etc, every single game. So this is a huge interview, starting with the actual direct Dan Houser talk about GTA 6, which is his prediction on how well the game will do, given all the success of the last games, and also what creates success in terms of financial success. Listen to this.
I think GTA 5 had the biggest launch in video game history, and GTA 6 has the potential to topping that. First of all, do you think it will? And more broadly, what was your definition of success for a video game?
I would assume it will, because it's so anticipated, and anticipation is the best driver of early sales. As we saw with GTA 4 versus Red Dead Redemption 1, you know, GTA 4 far more anticipated, sold much better early on. So I would assume it will sell really well. That was never my definition of success, but you certainly wanted to make money. You know, you're spending someone's money. So the number one success is, are you making that money back plus $1? At some level, that has to be the single most important thing. So you get to do it again. You know, you've got big teams of people need to pay the rent. You have to keep the lights on in the business. So you have to make a small profit. If you think in that way, that keeps you being creative. I think that was like trying to forget about that. It's not really an option. But we almost always did that. We didn't quite always do that, but we almost always did that. I think the definition of success for me was, had we tried to do new things and done or achieved some of our goals. Mm-hmm. That was the thing that I'm at. Were people responding to these worlds and these characters in a way that I wanted them to?
What I think is the most interesting and insightful clip when it comes to getting a feel of GTA 6, it's how the other Grand Theft Autos were written. I will dive more into specific thoughts about GTA 6 from Dan Houser. Let's listen to how the stories are being made, and also Dan Houser officially confirming that Niko Bellic from GTA 4 is Serbian, which has never been revealed up until this point. Listen to this.
When we printed out the scripts for GTA 4, it was about this high, and GTA 5 was about that high, but that was including all the pedestrians who'd have pages and pages just to create the illusion of a living world, because you interact with each one of them. But even the main script for the main mission was thousands of pages long, bit by bit by bit, over several years. But you start with, once people had determined, oh, here's the world, we're doing one based on a version of New York, say GTA 4. I was living in New York, had been living in New York for a few years. In terms of the process, it was trying to find an underbelly to New York and capture an immigrant experience that I'm not entirely sure how accurate that immigrant experience was in 2008 when the game came out, and then tell it story from a different angle as an immigrant, which I thought made it interesting. And then this sort of journey around these various New York characters. So I kind of spent probably a year traveling around with cops or meeting people on and off, and, you know, wandering around New York and driving around, and, you know, on and on, you know, while just go out for the morning from the office, normal stuff, but doing that through 2005, assembling little notes. Here's a funny character for this. Here's how, figuring out how the order we want to travel around the map in. Characters of this. What was an interesting take on the, you know, mob for that kind of time period? What was an interesting take on some Jamaican hoodlums for that kind of time period? And assembling lots of notes and more notes, and really, really, really running away from the work, which is, you know, I have to admit, it's part of my process, if there is any kind of process, which is not doing work, thinking about it but not working. You know, a lot of time, and then it all kind of pages and pages of notes, make more notes, no actual work, months and months of this, and then finally set myself a deadline, told all the other people on the senior people on the team, okay, I'll have a story draft to you Monday morning. I can't even remember what I was, say February the 1st. And then the weekend before was in a cabin we had upstate, and just stayed up all night, knocking these notes into shape, assemble about probably a 30-page document, a story synopsis and a character synopsis for each of the major characters, and then hand that over, and that would get broken down with me and the designers. And I was always clear, I'm not a game designer, I'm a sort of creative director. With me, and it'd break that down into missions. And then that takes another year or so of that slowly assembling, and the bulk of my work's then done for a bit, so I can relax and offer opinions on other people's work and be lazy for a bit. Soon I've got to start writing dialogue. And for GTA 4 in particular, it's like, well, we're going to try and write, our animation's going to be a lot better, our character models are going to start to look better, the world is going to look amazing, therefore we can support better, longer scenes, we can have more in-depth characters, but we've got to find a tone that works for that with the game. Easy, no problem. And I start to worry, and also writing as a Serbian immigrant, and I was an immigrant, but I'm not Serbian, and trying to capture what on earth that would feel like. So I start to worry again, avoid work for as long as possible, and then just sit down and start hammering away at a keyboard again late at night, hammering away at a keyboard and going, does that right? Is that? And once I get one speech, one turn of phrase that I would like for a character, then they suddenly come alive in my head. And so it's like writing with Niko, and he's awkward, he's out of town, but he's got more self-assurance in some way, not the American characters. And so once I kind of thought him through this, he's just stepped slightly back from their ridiculousness. And then he started to come to life. And then I would juxtapose him and his cousin, who had this much more Americanized energy. And that felt like it was a good double act. And then from there, it starts to come to life. But it's written in small chunks for the motion. So then we motion capture small chunks, and then the other writers would write the mission dialogue for small chunks, and we'd slowly assemble the game, sort of 10, 15 missions at a time over the next year and a half. I think one of the reasons that Grand Theft Auto is still so popular is we always tried as a group to really innovate from game to game within the confines of what it was. It was a crime drama. Began as a crime sim in GTA 1 about stealing, 2D top-down cars. And we always tried to innovate with the narrative and innovate with the art direction, innovate with every piece of the game. And I think having done, GTA 4, which was this kind of operatic journey for this big lead character, and then these two extra stories that came afterwards, the challenge was, can we make a video game which tends to be very much focused on one protagonist but have multi-protagonists? The technical challenge of moving from character to character, the team did such an amazing job that I don't think people realized how hard it was, but we would sit there just sort of holding our heads because they hurt so much around, like, what happens if you do this, then do that? This is so hard. Why have we decided to do this? It's horrible. And then it all came together. The idea was develop 3 characters who do feel like characters. They don't just feel like philosophical, psychological avatars, but where one is really driven by ego, one is really driven by id, and one is really driven by trying to get ahead. So some kind of representation of the superego, and see how that feels when they all play off against each other.
I absolutely love how he describes writing GTA 4 and other GTAs with that. And this shows that GTA 6 will start with Vice City, of course, and the surrounding areas as the world. And then they place a character like Lucia or Jason in that world. And then they start writing from there and also create all these side characters and little events that they do. And it is a very iterative, creative process. Now, let's take a listen about a little short part of the interview where they talk about the culture as a whole in Rockstar Games. This is very interesting how these people work together and how involved the co-founders are, which makes these games so great. Check this out.
At Rockstar, I was a worker amongst workers. The culture was one of excellence, and tried to provide creative clarity and also an ambition to make. We thought GTA 3 could be really popular, but really popular to us meant, quite honestly, it's going to sell 2 or 3 million copies. We knew we were making something innovative, but we didn't know if people would understand how innovative it was. When we got the chance to make Vice City and to try and repeat it, I think every time from then on, the team was very driven to make something better. It was long before we had lots of resources to use time and whatever money we had to always put impressive stuff on the screen, always think about what we can do to push the medium of video games and the medium of building fake worlds worlds further. It was, both clarity of here's what we're trying to do, here's what the tone of the game is going to be, here's how features will fit into that, and so why these features would work and these features wouldn't work. Because fundamentally, by 2002, you could put pretty much any feature into a game you wanted. There wasn't a technical limitation. It was just making it cohesive. And then it was also just everyone committing to a culture of excellence.
Naveed Ansari, an award-winning director and virtual reality game maker who worked with you on a number of Grand Theft Auto games, spoke highly about his time working with you. Quote, "We always worked ourselves to the bone, but it wasn't coming from the top down. Sam and Dan always rolled up their sleeves, and they were always there. They never left us holding the bag. We all thought we were making badass shit, so it didn't matter how hard we worked." So I'm sure there were some tough grinds.
Finishing it is certainly, it's tough, but it also is, intensely rewarding. And you get something done and you've made something. And that feeling is, as you say, really, really incredible. I mean, it can sometimes feel a bit empty as well, because it's when you finish it, you're like, oh, my life's got nothing to it. And then you have to, but that's the same with any big undertaking you take. I don't think that, when you're working that hard, you do not have a good work-life balance. But the truth is you're not working that hard all of the time. So you have to just manage it slightly differently.
Now, one of the subjects I find most interesting is DLC for story modes in Grand Theft Autos and Red Dead Redemption games. And then Hauser also spoke a little bit about Grand Theft Auto 5 DLC that was in the works but eventually scrapped, and a little bit about Grand Theft Auto 4. And he's almost alluding to Grand Theft Auto 6 DLCs as well, in terms of story mode expansions with possible new maps. Listen to this.
Is there DLCs or RDR GTA that you wish you had the time when you were there to have created?
Of course. There's always things I wish I'd done. I always wish I'd done more.
What would you have added? This is a fun, nerding out.
The internet knows we made a DLC, single-player DLC for GTA 5 that never came out. And we were also never really worked on another game. But I like the idea of it that was a GTA zombie game. That would have been funny. I think that could have been quite fun.
What was the GTA 5 DLC?
It was one when you played as Trevor, but he was a secret agent.
Oh.
It was cute. It never quite came together, and it was never finished. It was about half done when it got abandoned. But I think if that had come out, probably wouldn't have got to make Red Dead 2. So there's always compromises. But it was, I like making the stories. For me, I love the model of GTA 4 when you had the extra stories coming afterwards, or Red Dead 1 when you had the zombie pack coming afterwards. I like just doing these extra things. So I personally like to have done more of that in that company, and with stuff we're doing in the future, we're going to try and come up with worlds where we can add more stories. I like single player DLC. I just think the audience loves it, and it's really fun to make.
Now, the last thing I want to show you is how Rockstar Games' writers and Dan Houser deals with characters dying in their games, because this is very interesting as to how GTA 6 will end in terms of what do you do as a game developer when you kill off your character. And it seems like they've learned a lot about how to do it with the Red Dead Redemption game, and of course the question is, will they do it in GTA 6 too? Take a listen.
The actor was so good, and we've already seen a bunch of his work by then. Yeah. He was so good at reading those lines that I knew he could give us, that you could feel with that point, I think those lines are best when they're really short and punchy. And so I knew he'd be able to make that line sound good.
So you were imagining his voice.
Yeah, and I think all of those actors on Red Dead Redemption 1 were so strong that they really brought that game to life. If them and Rod, the director, hadn't done such a good job, it would have sounded cheesy as hell.
You've said that the ending of RDR1 is one of the best things you've been a part of creating. Why? Why is that ending so powerful to you? What does it represent?
I think because for the story to work, I mean, just from a technical challenge, for the story to work, he had to die. But for a game to work, it felt like a challenge to make him die. It was probably the 4th, 5th, or 6th open world game I'd worked on, and I'd spent all these years before that working out how these stories worked, how to make them work technically, how to make them feel right, how they interacted with the open form gameplay as best I could. And suddenly we're going to break one of our golden rules, which was at the end of the game, you're freeing the character to go and wrap up all the side stories to play forever. You're not going to be able to do that in this game because the guy's going to be dead, and we're going to have you play as a different character. And the narrative is going to be, if we've done a good job, compelling enough where you're not going to care about that, and or you're going to be upset that he's dead, but you're going to actually have this emotional moment. So I think it was a big risk from a technical perspective for us to do that, and then it worked. So I think that was something very full of fear, and it worked. It worked out okay. I mean, I think people were really upset and angry at us for doing it because they didn't think it was going to happen. But I think they also had that kind of experience you're describing, which is that kind of creative moment where, transcendent moment with characters in a piece of fiction, which is what we were always aspiring to giving people. I
mean, it's incredible because I don't remember a single video game that has done that before.
Well, I would like to have at the end of GTA 4 killed Niko, but you couldn't do it. The game doesn't work that way. So it was this thing where we hadn't done it, had thought about doing it, hadn't done it, and then going, well, let's do it. Let's take the risk and do it. We can't do it. Let's try it, and it worked.
Yeah. What about the decision with the son? John give so much effort to make sure that Jack doesn't end up in a life of violence. And then it's very Godfather-like. He's dragged back into it through revenge.
That was also, the game still had to work as a game. Whether that was the right ending, 100% the best ending from a pure storytelling perspective, I don't know. But I know that we had to make the game work.
Oh, interesting.
So it was. I think it kind of worked in that way where Jack can't escape, but I always also wanted a version of it where Jack did escape, but that wasn't. Both were interesting to me.
Can you just dig in a little deeper? Like, what do you mean about for the game to work? It's such a direct. It's like a Kubrick talking about for this movie to work. It has to have, because from my perspective, I just think about the story. What's the technical aspect for the game to work?
The mechanical experience is, you have an avatar you control, and the games don't really end, and you have to be able to wander around the world and do stuff. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the game, you had to be able to wander around with your fairly limited set of features, which is you can run up to someone and punch them, or run up to someone and shoot them, or run up to someone and rob them, or run up to someone and talk to them, and that's or run up and jump on a horse or do all this other stuff, in order for the game still to be fun and people to get this full 360-degree experience with it. They had to, if they wanted 100% the game, as opposed to just finishing the story, you have to have an avatar to do that stuff with. Mm-hmm. So that was the sort of challenge of Jack's character / wrapping up the story as Jack.
Although there's real power for the avatar to end, the finiteness.
Yeah, both the Red Dead, so you obviously change avatar. Mm-hmm. Which we got, and then did it again. I think there's something interesting about that moment when you change from one character to another, because they are you and they're not you, and then you're suddenly someone else.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I was really shaken by that experience, but it's a beautiful experience. It's like an unforgettable experience. And what else can video games possibly reach for? That's to create that experience. That's what great films do. That's what great books do.
It's that and the world building in games. I think the experience of being in this fake place and then taking on these narrative adventures, when that combines, you've got the amazing experience.
So who do you think is the best character you've ever created in RDR? So to me, I think definitively Arthur from Red Dead Redemption 2 is the best character ever created in video games. I think there's not even John would be the same, which is hilarious to say, but like those are John would be a close second, but Arthur is definitively. And you've talked about in that interview, you said that a lot of video games work on the same premise, that you start as a weak person and end up as a strong superhero. But what if you start as a tough guy, someone who already is very strong, someone that is emotionally confident of his place in the world? Arthur's journey is not about becoming a superhero, because he's almost one at the start, but it's about an intellectual roller coaster when his worldview gets taken apart. So it's very different than the normal journey of a character.
Yeah. in a game.
I
Wanted to reverse it.
Yeah.
So there were a couple other themes that matched that. So they're guys from the Wild West, but they're being pushed ever further east. So it was almost like an anti-Western, an Eastern. You're traveling east. You're traveling into civilization. And I don't think I would have been grappling with those ideas earlier in my career. Because there was, this idea of getting a different kind of strength and a different kind of weakness was interesting.
What about the component of mortality? Of a character facing his own mortality over a prolonged period? Sort of just realize the prospect of like real sort of fear of death, realization of death.
Yeah, I thought that was really
part of the story. Really
a fun thing to play with. John dies in Red Dead 1 and wanted to top that with Red Dead 2, or do that in a different way. And so the idea that John's death is fairly sudden. And so if he's got this long drawn out death, and then I'd always been obsessed by TB. As diseases go, it's a great literary device, because it is this long drawn out slow death, but in which you are also getting weaker. And my grandfather actually had TB before they invented antibiotics and was sent to a sanatorium just after he'd had his child, my father, and survived, but only 3 of them out of like 35 survived. So I was always captivated and by TB as an illness. It felt like it was an interesting thing to play around with as an idea, this guy getting weaker who felt like he was immortal, and essentially was immortal. He was the protagonist in a video game. He could not die, and suddenly he is becoming mortal, and but that helps him see stuff. I thought that was a different way of doing a lead character in a game.
Yeah. Do you think it's the greatest character you've ever created?
I think he's the best lead character. The lead characters are different from the side characters, and I think he's the most rounded and works the best. Him and Niko are the two I like. They were the 2 most ambitious. So for me, it's always sort of a toss up. But then I loved all the stuff like the art team did such an amazing job. It was their idea with the journal and that kind of the way that all the features worked into Arthur's character. I thought that was he was really rounded. He worked in lots of different ways really well. I loved his flawed relationship with his old girlfriend, things like that, all the side, the bits that kind of turned up around him.
So those are the main insights of the GTA 6 interview with Dan Houser, ex-co-founder of Rockstar Games. I hope you guys enjoyed and learned something from this, because it's super great to hear this guy finally talk, and I love that he did this long 3-hour interview. So let me know what you guys think, like and subscribe. Thank you for being a member, Rolfcore, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.